I never thought my dream home would turn into my biggest nightmare, and I certainly never imagined the person handing me the keys wouldn't be my husband, but his so-called realtor friend. If you told me 2 years ago that I'd be sitting in a nearly empty house, my voice echoing off the hardwood floors, telling the internet how I got played by the two people I trusted most, I probably would have laughed and told you I was too smart for that. I was the organized one, the planner, the woman who triple-checks paperwork and color-codes her calendar. My friends called me Mrs. How did I miss the fact that my name was never on the deed to the house I spent 2 years saving for? Let's rewind. Because it started out like every HGTV fantasy, young-ish couple, big dreams, endless scrolling through Zillow. I'm Amanda, 35, project manager at a tech company, and for the last 6 years, I thought I was married to my best friend, Ben. Ben is charming. The kind of man who can talk his way out of a parking ticket or into an upgrade at any hotel. He always had big plans, but sometimes his follow-through left a little to be desired. I used to think it was cute, now I know better. After renting for years, scrimping and saving, we finally had enough for a down payment. I was so proud. We'd been through layoffs, student loans, even a minor kitchen fire, and now it was our time. Our apartment was crammed with cardboard boxes and paint samples. We argued about everything, backsplashes, mortgage rates, the merits of an open floor plan. But every fight ended with us laughing in bed, dreaming about the backyard barbecues and holidays we'd host. Here, where the realtor comes in. Ben insisted on using his old friend Julia to help us find the perfect place. She's the best, he told me, winking, and she owes me a favor. I met Julia at a work happy hour once, tall, always perfectly dressed, those intimidating heels I can never pull off. She was friendly, if a bit intense. The kind of woman who remembered your coffee order, but also who you were sitting next to the last time she saw you. I was skeptical, but Ben was so insistent, and honestly, the market was insane. If Julia could help us move quickly, I was in. She breezed through showings, pointing out flaws I missed and negotiating like a shark. Within weeks, we'd found it, a sweet 1940s bungalow with a porch swing, built-in bookshelves, and a kitchen that made me want to actually learn how to cook. Julia handled everything, scheduling inspections, explaining escrow, and making us laugh with stories about nightmare buyers. Closing day came. I remember the adrenaline, the clinking of glasses, the happy tears. Julia and Ben handled all the paperwork at her office, saying it was easier, less formal. I felt a little left out, but by then I was swept up in Pinterest boards and housewarming parties. I signed where they told me, nodded when Ben said he'd take care of the details. We moved in a week later, and for a while it was bliss. I filled the house with thrift store finds, painted the guest rooms sunshine yellow, planted herbs in the windowsill. Ben threw himself into the garage, tinkering with his beloved collection of vintage cars. Julia came by often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes to check in on how we were settling. And then little cracks started to show. Ben became secretive about finances. There were receipts I didn't recognize, and suddenly Julia was around a lot more, even when Ben wasn't home. She'd drop off mail, help with little repairs, offer unsolicited decorating tips. Once, I found her rearranging the living room. She laughed it off, but the possessiveness in her voice made my skin crawl. The real tipping point came on a rainy Thursday. Ben was working late again, and I decided to tackle the growing pile of important papers he kept shoving into the junk drawer. As I sorted through insurance forms and warranty booklets, I stumbled on a thick manila envelope, addressed to Julia, but at our home address. Inside, the deed to our house. But the name on the deed wasn't mine. It wasn't even Ben's, it was Julia's. Julia Marie Walters, sole owner. I stared at that paper for a full 5 minutes, my hands shaking, my mind racing through every memory, every conversation, every joke Ben had made about letting Julia handle the details. I wanted to scream, to throw something. Instead, I grabbed my phone, took photos of every document, and sat down on the kitchen floor. You know that feeling when the bottom drops out of your stomach and you realize your life is nothing like what you thought? That was me at 10:13 p.m., surrounded by proof that my home wasn't mine at all. The worst part, I didn't even cry at first. I just felt numb. How could I, Mrs. Spreadsheet, have let this happen? I replayed every step in my mind, every signature, every handshake. Had I really been so blinded by trust? Ben came home after midnight, smelling like motor oil and takeout. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I played it cool, poured poured us each a glass of wine, and listened to him ramble about some problem with the radiator. He had no idea. That night, I barely slept. My mind spun with questions, scenarios, half-formed plans. Was this legal? Was Julia just a front? Had Ben been planning this all along? I Googled property laws, scoured Reddit for deed fraud, and started cataloging every financial document I could find. By dawn, I had a folder on my laptop labeled "just in case." I wanted to talk to someone, my mom, my best friend, even Julia herself, but the shame held me back. I felt stupid, tricked. How do you explain to people that you lost your house to your husband's realtor? Looking back, I see now that this was the first step in letting go of the illusion. For years, I thought Ben was my partner. Turns out, I was just convenient. But if you think I let them win quietly, you don't know me at all. If you've ever wanted to know what rock bottom feels like, picture sitting alone in a house you thought was yours, knowing every photo on the wall, every mug in the cabinet, even your favorite thrifted lamp technically belongs to someone else. I stared at the deed on my phone until the words blurred, like maybe if I blinked hard enough, my name would magically appear on that paper. But reality doesn't care about your feelings. And as much as I wanted to curl up and cry, my project manager brain kicked in. I made a list, because lists are safe, logical, and they make you feel in control when everything else is chaos. Confirm the deed. Check every financial record from the last 2 years. Talk to a lawyer. Confront Ben somehow. I started with the deed. Google said I could request a copy from the county clerk, so I did, using my lunch break at work like I was checking on a library book, not my entire future. The confirmation came by email within 2 days. Julia Marie Walters, sole owner of the property at our address. I felt sick. There it was in official government font. No mention of me, not even Ben. Step 2 was harder. I'd always let Ben handle the bills. But now I dug through every folder, email, and online account. Mortgage payments all auto-debited from Ben's personal account, not our joint one. Every receipt, every statement had Julia's name, sometimes COR address, sometimes a P.O. box I'd never noticed before. There were payments I couldn't explain. Large transfers to an account in Julia's name, weird consulting fees that looked like hush money, honestly. It was like following breadcrumbs through a haunted house. Every discovery made my skin crawl. I thought about calling Ben's bluff, but what would I say? "Hey, honey, why does our house belong to your realtor friend?" I could practically hear his laugh. He'd always been smooth, good at twisting words. I needed evidence. A plan, maybe even revenge. That's when I called my best friend Danny. She's a public defender, which means she's seen every flavor of betrayal and stupidity the city has to offer. Danny listened in silence as I spilled the story, then let out a low whistle. "Girl, this is some next-level scam. You need a real estate lawyer, like yesterday." She put me in touch with her colleague, a bulldog of a woman named Sharon, who agreed to meet over Zoom. Sharon's face didn't flinch as I laid out the details, but her tone sharpened with every new fact. "Legally, you're not an owner. You have no rights to the property, but if you can prove fraud or that Ben and Julia misled you, maybe even conspired, there might be recourse. It'll be messy." I think messy was an understatement. Sharon explained that, since I'd signed documents without fully reading them, my bad, and Julia was the only official owner, my options were limited. "But," she added, "if there's proof Ben and Julia were more than just business partners, if you can show intent to deceive, especially with marital funds, things could get interesting." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in stunned silence. Was I really going to have to go full private investigator on my own husband? Apparently, yes. The next few days were a blur. I acted normal at home, but every interaction was laced with suspicion. Ben would laugh, crack open a beer, tinker in the garage with his vintage cars, his bobbies, the only things he truly seemed to love. Julia still popped by, too friendly by half, dropping off flowers or a housewarming pie she probably bought at Whole Foods. I started documenting everything. Photos, receipts, emails, even their conversations when they thought I wasn't listening. My nerves were shot, my hands shook, but I forced myself to smile, to play along. I wasn't just Mrs. Spreadsheet anymore, I was Mrs. Spy. That Saturday, Ben announced he'd invited Julia over to celebrate some new car part he'd finally found. I watched them through the kitchen window, laughing, too close, sharing some private joke. My stomach twisted with anger and humiliation. I snapped a picture, more out of habit than anything else, and that's when I noticed it. Julia had a set of keys to the house. She let herself in, moved around like she owned the place. Because, legally, she did. That night, I confronted Ben. Not with shouting or tears, I'd done enough of those in my head. I waited until he was dozing on the couch, the TV flickering blue across his face. I sat down next to him, careful, calm. "Hey, Ben, can I ask you something?" He grunted, half asleep. "Sure, babe." "How come Julia has a set of keys to our house?" He blinked, then shrugged. "She's the realtor, remember? Sometimes she has to check things, make sure the workmen did what they promised." "Ben, the house is in Julia's name, isn't it?" The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. He didn't deny it. He just stared at me, jaw clenched, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "It's just paperwork, Amanda. It was easier for the mortgage. She has better credit." "Then why didn't you tell me?" He hesitated, then reached for my hand. "I was going to fix it. It's complicated. You know I'd never hurt you, right?" I pulled my hand away. "I don't know that anymore, Ben." He had no answer for that. He just stared at the TV, pretending the problem would go away if he ignored it long enough. Looking back now, I see how tired he was, of me, of the lie, of everything. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Instead of confrontation, I started planning. I tracked every car in his collection, every piece of paperwork, every little secret he'd stashed away in that garage. If I couldn't have my house, I was going to make sure I didn't leave empty-handed. And that's when I got my idea, one so wild, even Julia would have admired the audacity. But more on that soon. You know how they say revenge is a dish best served cold? Well, I didn't want revenge, not at first. What I wanted was justice, balance, closure, something that would make all those empty nights I spent decorating a house I didn't own feel less humiliating. I didn't tell Ben I'd spoken to a lawyer. I didn't tell him I knew about the deed. I didn't scream, cry, or storm out dramatically. That's not how this Amanda operates. No, I stayed calm, I stayed quiet, and I started digging. See, while Ben and Julia were busy playing house flippers and lovebirds, they forgot I'm the one who files the taxes. I'm the one who knows where every invoice, password, and car title is. I'm the one who used to organize the annual car show entry list, log the VINs, check the insurance policies. These cars weren't just his toys, they were assets. Collectibles, some of them worth more than our wedding. And he made the mistake of putting those in my name. Why? Because, apparently, at one point he trusted me. So while he was busy planning house renovations, with Julia, I was on the phone with an auctioneer. I was getting appraisals. I was calling shelters, talking to nonprofit directors, building something that mattered, because I needed this betrayal to mean something. Let me back up. After that night on the couch, Ben tried to pretend everything was normal. He'd kiss my forehead, ask if I wanted wine with dinner, joke about our 5-year plan. But his phone was always buzzing. Julia's name would flash up, sometimes as Jules, sometimes as Gary, once even as laundry guy. It was pathetic. One afternoon while he was at the gym, I found the final straw, a hidden note in his desk drawer, scribbled in Julia's perfect curls. "Can't wait to finally be home together." Finally be home together. Like I was some temp, a placeholder, until they could finish whatever game they were playing. That was the day I knew I had to move. And not just move in silence, like a woman who's been underestimated her whole life and just found the manual for burning it all down. I created a spreadsheet, obviously, color-coded, green for vehicles in my name, yellow for shared accounts I could access, red for assets I couldn't touch, the house, certain stocks, and of course, the ring he gave me, which was a fake. I had it appraised. Turns out it was cubic zirconia. Julia's, no doubt, was real. I didn't tell Danny until I was ready. When I finally showed her the plan to sell the cars, donate the funds, and disappear before they knew what hit them, she stared at me like I'd sprouted horns. "Amanda, this is savage. Is it illegal?" She blinked. "Technically, no, but it's aggressive." "Good." I contacted GearShift, a women-led automotive auction platform that specializes in rare vintage vehicles. I told them the story, or at least the parts that would get them emotionally invested. A betrayal. A woman reclaiming her power. They were in. We planned a limited, exclusive, one-day-only online auction. I marketed it under a new brand, Keys of Freedom. The headline: One Woman's Divorce Fundraiser, Benefiting Domestic Violence Shelters. It went viral in 48 hours. Women across the country messaged me. TikToks, reactions, DMs with stories of cheating husbands, stolen dreams, gaslighting boyfriends. I wasn't alone. And neither were they. When the auction day came, Ben was out house shopping. I wore a red blazer and lipstick I hadn't touched since our honeymoon. I stood in that garage, every car spotless, polished to a gleam, knowing that every bid was a nail in the coffin of the fantasy I'd lived in for 3 years. Ben came home right as the last lot closed, his 1967 Mustang, sold for $112,000. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his voice already cracking. "Freedom," I said, "and charity." "You can't do this," he sputtered. "These are my cars." I handed him the paperwork. "No, they're mine. You gave them to me for tax purposes. You always said I was better at numbers." He went silent. Then, in a voice I'll never forget, he said, "You're gonna regret this." I smiled. "No, Ben, I regret not doing this sooner." He stormed out, not before kicking over a bucket of detailing supplies like a toddler. Julia didn't show up that night. Maybe she saw the auction. Maybe she figured out the part I hadn't told anyone yet. I filed a whistleblower report with the IRS. Remember all those shady payments to Julia's P.O. box? Yeah. Turns out misreporting income isn't just immoral, it's illegal. The next week, a very polite federal agent called me. I shared everything. I may or may not have smiled when I hung up. Within a month, I moved out. Not out of the city, but out of the lie. I leased a small 2-bedroom apartment near downtown, started consulting part-time, and launched my own blog, Burn Book Balance. Tagline: When they set your life on fire, roast marshmallows. Followers, 80K and rising. Looking back now, yeah, I wish I'd read the deed. I wish I'd questioned things sooner. But I also know that pain made me bold, betrayal made me awake. And now I sleep better, even if it's on a futon in a rental, because it's mine. Some people say there's no satisfaction in revenge, that it just makes you bitter, keeps you trapped in the past. Maybe that's true if all you do is plot ways to make someone suffer. But if your revenge means taking your story back, helping others, and never letting anyone else gaslight you again, then it feels like winning, even if the victory is a little messy. That first week after the auction, my phone exploded. Every single woman who'd ever been talked down to by a Ben or blindsided by a Julia found me. I got emails from car lovers, from divorcees, from women who just wanted to see what freedom looked like. News crews picked up the auction story. A morning show anchor actually asked me if I felt bad for ruining a man's life. I laughed on live TV. He didn't need my help for that, I said. But privately, things were messier. Ben didn't disappear, oh no, he wasn't the type to go quietly. The first few days, he tried love bombing. "Amanda, come home, let's talk, I made mistakes, but we can fix this." I didn't answer. Then came the rage texts. "You stole from me. You ruined everything. You're crazy." Typical. He even tried showing up at my new place once, pounding on the door. My neighbor, bless her, she's ex-military, came out with a baseball bat. He left in a hurry. Meanwhile, Julia? Well, she tried to play it cool, posted inspirational quotes on Instagram. Not every ending is a failure. Sometimes it's the beginning of something beautiful. Under one post, a commenter wrote, "You mean someone else's husband." It got 1,000 likes. But hear what nobody told me about being the woman who blows up her own life for the sake of honesty. Grief hits in waves. It wasn't just about Ben or Julia or the stupid house. I missed the version of myself that believed in happily ever after. I missed thinking that love was a team sport, not a competition. Sometimes at night, I'd reread our old messages, see the photos from our house hunting trips. I even missed the dog I'd lost in the divorce shuffle. Julia kept him, can you believe it? I'd imagine what I'd say to Ben if I could talk without all the anger. I'd imagine saying, "Why wasn't I enough?" But I knew better now. It was never about me not being enough. It was about him needing too much, about Julia loving the game, not the prize. Work kept me sane. The blog blew up. My post, "How to Sell a Cheater's Car for Good Karma," went viral on TikTok. I started getting speaking gigs at women's centers, podcasts, even a guest spot on a late-night show where the host made me recite my favorite revenge one-liner. And as my new life got bigger, Ben's world shrank. The IRS did get involved, turns out. Whistleblowers get a cut of recovered funds, who knew? Julia found out the hard way that living in a house you don't legally own isn't as fun as posting about manifesting abundance. Rumor was they broke up after a screaming match in the driveway. My old neighbor sent me a video. I watched it on loop, then deleted it. But healing isn't a straight line. Some nights I'd dream Ben was back, or that Julia and I became weird friends, or that the house burned down and I didn't care. I'd wake up sweaty, heart pounding, the weight of everything pressing down. Then I'd sit at my laptop, write about it for my followers, and hit post. Someone always commented, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." That kept me going. One Saturday, I volunteered at a local women's shelter. A woman came up to me, nervous, clutching a beat-up purse. "Are you Amanda?" she asked. "From TikTok," I nodded. She burst into tears. "Your story saved my life. I was going to go back to him, but you showed me I could start over." I hugged her. We cried together. And in that moment, I realized Ben and Julia hadn't taken everything from me. They'd just given me a new purpose. And when people asked me, "Would you do it all again?" I smiled and told them I'd buy the house in my own name this time. Looking back now, I see. Maybe I needed the betrayal, the loss, and the public humiliation to finally figure out who I am without anyone else's last name. If you're ready for even more drama, the final unraveling, the public showdown, and how I turned the worst year of my life into a viral phenomenon, let me know. If you told me a year ago that my DMs would be full of strangers' divorce stories, that I'd be giving keynote speeches called "How to Survive a Gaslighting Breakup," and that my ex's mistress would still be subtweeting me from the house I paid for, well, I'd have said you were crazy. But here's the thing about public drama in the age of TikTok: it never really ends. It just mutates, gets weirder, and somehow, if you're lucky, starts working for you, not against you. After the auction, after Julia's Instagram meltdown and Ben's angry drive-by, I was still reeling. But the more I poured my story into my blog and TikTok, the more I realized I wasn't just healing myself. I was giving thousands of other women permission to say, "Me too, but watch what I do next." People kept asking for details, so here's what really happened with the house. The shelter for women that got all the proceeds invited me to the grand opening of their new wing, a playroom for the kids, funded almost entirely by Amanda's revenge car auction. I can't tell you what it felt like, standing there as they unveiled the plaque with my name on it. All these little kids running around, laughing, coloring on the walls, safe. For a moment, I forgot Ben and Julia even existed. But life loves a twist. The local paper ran a feature about the donation. The headline: "Jilted Wife Funds Women's Shelter with Ex's Classic Cars." It was deliciously petty and absolutely true. The story spread. I got emails from other nonprofits. I started a little fund for women trying to leave bad relationships. Suddenly, I had a purpose bigger than just proving a point to Ben and Julia. Of course, that meant the trolls came out too. "You're just bitter. You ruined a man's life over a house? Grow up." I won't lie, some nights, that stuff hurt. But then I'd get a DM from a woman who just packed her bags, or a lawyer offering pro bono help to a stranger, or even an old friend who finally admitted she'd always thought Ben was shady. One day, a radio station invited me to do a call-in segment about unconventional revenge. I was nervous, but as soon as I started telling my story, the realtor, friend, the fake deed, the cars, it was like therapy. Listeners called in with their own wild stories. It felt like a club, but not the sad kind, the kind where nobody wants to be a member, but everyone is secretly glad to find each other. Meanwhile, Ben's life kept unraveling. The IRS audit turned up some creative accounting. Julia moved out. Turns out the house in her name was leveraged to the hilt, and without Ben's paycheck, she couldn't keep up. She tried to DM me an apology. "I'm sorry for how things went down," but I left her on read. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me and the women watching my story, hoping they could do something brave too. My family came around slowly. My dad actually said, "I wish I taught you how to read a deed." My mom just hugged me. Even my sister, who'd once called my blog "Oversharing for Strangers," admitted, "I get it now." We had dinners, just us girls, and laughed at how insane the last year had been. The best part? My revenge blog morphed into something bigger, a resource for women, a guide for spotting red flags, a meme page, a safe place. I even got invited to a TEDx event to talk about weaponizing betrayal for good. Yeah, that title shocked them too. And Ben, he sent me one last email. You got what you wanted, I hope you're happy. For the first time, I didn't even want to reply. Looking back, I see that the worst thing that ever happened to me was also the best thing. I became the woman I'd always admired, resilient, funny, unapologetic. My pain turned into power, my heartbreak into community. So when people say, "Did you forgive him?" I tell them, I forgave myself, that's more than enough. If you want to know how this all truly ends, if there's redemption, real peace, or just more twists, stick around. Because the final part is coming, and I promise, you won't see it coming. You'd think the drama would finally die down after I won. But healing, real healing, isn't about winning or even moving on, it's about what you choose to carry and what you finally decide to let go. Few months after the car auction, the dust began to settle. I was still getting the occasional hate comment, "She's just an attention seeker," and the occasional marriage proposal from divorced dads in my DMs, "You sound like a woman who knows what she wants." But mostly, my life was my own again. For the first time in years, I woke up without anxiety gnawing at my chest. I took morning walks, started reading for pleasure, even adopted a rescue dog from the very shelter my auction had funded. His name, Karma. Every so often, someone would stop me at the farmer's market or outside the yoga studio. "Are you the woman who?" Sometimes I was embarrassed. Other times, I'd flash them a grin and say, "Yeah, that's me. Car-crushing, house-losing, comeback queen." The best part was seeing their faces light up, not with pity, but recognition. Like they knew exactly what it felt like to be blindsided and wanted to celebrate the fact I hadn't let it destroy me. Meanwhile, Julia vanished from social media for a while. Ben, according to mutual acquaintances, tried to start over in another city. The forever home he'd tried to build on a lie was foreclosed. That was never my real victory, though. My victory was the network of women, the new confidence I wore like armor, and the way my family now showed up for me, no questions asked. I kept the blog running, though it turned into more of a community than a diary. I started a series called The Real Deed, interviewing other women who'd survived financial infidelity, betrayal, or heartbreak. Some stories made mine look almost tame, but every story had one thing in common: the moment a woman realized she didn't have to let someone else write her ending. The most unexpected twist came on a rainy Saturday when I got a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable: Julia. I almost tossed it in the trash, but curiosity won. It was a real apology. Not excuses, not "I was manipulated too," just remorse. She said she'd lost everything but had started volunteering at a women's shelter, inspired by my story. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she wrote, "but I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. Thank you for forcing me to see the truth, even if it hurt." I stared at that letter for a long time. I never responded. But I felt a strange kind of peace, knowing that my pain had sparked a tiny bit of change, even in the last person I'd expected. Looking back now, I realize I never would have found my voice, my strength, or my purpose if I hadn't been betrayed in the most spectacular, public, and humiliating way possible. Betrayal broke me open, but it also built something better in its place. So here's my real moral. Sometimes you lose the house, the marriage, the safety net. Sometimes the people you trust most turn out to be the ones you should run from. But if you're lucky, and if you refuse to stay silent, you get to write a story worth sharing. You get to inspire others, and you get to wake up every day knowing you are so much more than what was done to you. If you're listening, if you've ever felt alone or powerless or like the world just stomped all over your trust, remember this: your story isn't over. You can turn the wreckage into something beautiful. You can help someone else feel less alone, and you can always, always start again. Would I buy a house with someone again? Probably not without 3 lawyers and a Google spreadsheet, but I'd take a risk on myself every single time. And that, as they say, is the real deed. Subscribe to my Mia's Stories YouTube channel for raw, emotional stories and authentic insights that encourage healing, growth, and understanding. Don't forget to be part of a supportive space where stories inspire and lessons resonate. What do you think about this story? Let us know in the comments. Your opinion truly matters to us, and we're here for you.